Yeah, it's something. We take any other service meetings. आराम से बैठ के कर लो चल पड़े अरे वहां नहीं है ना स्क्रीन पे सेकंड नहीं इसकी विंडो पे Would you like to come around this side or you want to bolo? Can कर देना we have a Maybe not. Sit with Office. Yeah, it's given both. When your turn will come, they will copy you to the data and then they will. Yes. Listen. Are the speakers ready? Who are the speakers? 1, 2, 3, and 4. All 4. Okay. So why don't you begin? I will read, I will speak, and should I tell you? All right, please switch off your audios, everyone. YouTube बंद करनी पड़ेगी कहाँ है ये okay. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin this session. This is the last session of the day. There are parallel sessions going on, and in this particular session, the chair is our dear friend, Professor Hemraj Sharma, who has been part of our society for very long. He's attended several of our conferences, and we've had the pleasure of watching him grow from a young assistant professor to the professor that he is now. So thank you for joining us today, and you will be chairing this session in which there are 4 speakers. So there are 4 speakers, 2 are from Poland, and 1 is from, you are from China? Yes. Right. So she's from China, Hong Kong actually, and we have 1 lady from Nepal. Right. So over to you, Professor Hemraj. You can introduce them and manage the time so that we finish by latest by 5:30. Over to you.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. A very good evening to one and all present here, respected Professor Manjit Jaiswal and Professor Devrati ma'am, and other worthy colleagues. So in this session, we have 4 speakers. One is Professor Sushmita Talukdar from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. She'll be the first speaker. Then we have Daniel Kalinowski from Poland. And the third one is Yuhei Shen from Hong Kong, China. And fourth, the last speaker will be Professor Adela, again from Poland. So I request the first speaker. The first speaker is with us, Professor Sushmita Talukdar. The time for every presentation will be 15 minutes each, and then followed by discussion. We have 90 minutes rather. Right? So that way, 5 to 7 minutes will be for discussion. So the first speaker with us is Sushmita Talukdar. And ma'am, topic is tracing adaptation from kitchen to screen. I hope it's going to be very interesting for all of us. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. The title of my presentation is Tracing Adaptation from Kitchen to Screen. Next. Screen is not moving. In this section, I like to draw your attention to the pictures that I have posted. That one is from the old cookbook, which my mother used to do while doing recipe, cooking some dish in the kitchen. And the next one is that the digital cooking blogs. So next, please. Examining a few Bengali and Nepali cooking blogs, I like to find out the cultural identity in the present digital age. Now, next is that based on the identity discourse, which is that the existing scholarship of the identity discourse is based on socio-cultural and political perspective, but a major sub-area of adaptation in food studies remains underexplored. That's why I have decided that this time in Melow 25 conference that I would be talking on the culinary adaptation by using theory of Hutchian, Jenkins, and Moore. So this would be the richest focus, is okay. Now, I just like to ask about talking about our present lifestyle. Are we sure what we are taking, what we'll take as breakfast, lunch, evening snack, and dinner? No, because there are many options and varieties of food items from breakfast to dinner to fulfill both the needs and desires of people of all ages, irrespective of one's community-based identity. We have been laid by widespread flow of information on food and services with a click in the present world of communication. My study tries to find out what do these cultural texts and or cooking blogs and digital services and or platform-based food culture project about present cultural identity. What do the food bloggers adapt? Why? How do they negotiate between the tradition and transformation in digital spaces? And most importantly, how do the bloggers show processual adaptation distinct from fixed adaptation, say a novel into a film or theater? Who are their target audience? And overall, what these cooking blogs reveal of today's consumer culture. Next slide. Based on the study of audiences' response to these cooking blogs, consumerism in today's participatory culture, and interdependence between the content creator and consumer, my study hypothesizes that these cooking blogs are dynamic sites where food is always in the process of becoming rather than being, which further demonstrates that cultural identity is not a product, rather a process. Next slide. So, next slide, please. So today's the adaptation and the challenges that cooking bloggers have to face is in what sense it is different. It is different in the sense that it is that the digital media that has shaped it different, because adaptation in culinary dishes is not new. It is prevalent since antiquity. Cooking bloggers have to face, or they are facing, several challenges, several, different types of challenges and survival strategies in crowded platform economy, audience demands, and market pressures. And that actually, project how new dynamics of processual adaptation is there in while talking about culinary adaptation. So it is that the cooking bloggers have to negotiate, or they negotiate between the tradition and the transformation. Next slide. So processual adaptation is both what and how, but in its whatness, the product does not become an end product. By how, I mean shifting from a prescriptive textual cookbook culture, as for example, Thakurbari Ranna by Purnima Thakur, to audio like Bilade's radio program like Mohila Mahal, and then to audio-visual cooking blogs in digital media. Next slide, please. Cooking blogs of shell roti. It's a traditional Nepali ring-shaped rice bread, illustrates how, in its processual adaptation, that shell roti shifts from its rhetoric of ritualistic festival favorite nostalgia of Tihar. Tihar is a festival of light and collective identity to a quick fusion snack of everyday busy life. And one blog called Shajilo Kitchen Blog has named this traditional Nepali bread as easy recipe for busy moms. Next slide. So all adaptation, as that Linda Hutton has also told, that no adaptation just exists in vacuum. Every adaptation has its own context and history. So in this context, I would like to talk about I would like to talk about the historical context of the partition of Bengal in 1947, its consequent impact of huge migration of people from East Bengal to Calcutta, which actually reshaped food culture with remarkable adaptation out of scarcity, needs, and survival, which reflects how creativity grew out of scarcity through frugality. As for example, here I have given the example of kochu shak, which is called cuculazia, and or RB stems and leaves, previously which was identified as poor man's food, gradually has become a nostalgia, an authentic Bengali dish of popular restaurants of Kolkata, like Himur Heshel, Six Baliganj Place, to name a few in its new adapted form, as kochu shak with fish head. So now I will here that I have also given another illustration of millet kodo, which I will illustrate later. Next slide, please. Now I will give you some illustrations or based on the case studies of Bengali cuisines. That here processual adaptation resists closer. I have already told that. It is continuous and open-ended, a back and forth adjustment between old and new, between tradition and modernization, rather than finalized in a single transformation. An illustration of Bengali cooking blog, Shukto. Shukto is actually one dish which is usually served at the beginning of a Bengali dish, exemplifies that it is not just an end product, as it is continuously being edited into short clips, subtitled for non-Bengali audience, and then again reappropriated by another creator on a silent video recipe with some fusion. As for example, Bhangachora Shukto recipe or Katla fish head Shukto recipe, www.strawlrecipe.com. Similarly, an illustration of Kilsha Paturi shows processual adaptation as it moves from stone ground mustard seed paste to ready-made and or grinder paste dust, from coal-fired slow cooking process in banana leaves to its faster preparation on gas stoves or microwaves, often in aluminum foil with modern recipe tweaks. Thus, in its processual adaptation, Ilsa Papuri, without losing its cultural memory, becomes a faster but both familiar and new. Next slide. A similar process is evident in the Nepali traditional dish gundruk, a fermented leafy green dish made from sun-dried and fermented mustard, radish, or cauliflower greens, which, ensuring food security, is kept preserved to be served in agrarian communities during lean months. But gradually, gundruk is being adapted in diverse contexts. In urban Nepal, it is marketed as a packaged commodity among Nepali diasporas. It becomes a nostalgic cultural marker, often modified with locally available grains. And on digital platforms, bloggers readapt gundruk by experimenting it with fusion recipes such as gundruk soup with noodles or gundruk salad. Thus, in processual adaptation, a dish is not just a finished product, but a reiterative practice of a physical or a cloud kitchen. Next slide. These illustrations thus projects that cooking blogs are dynamic sites of adaptation where food becomes an ever-evolving negotiation between past and present, memory and survival. Next slide. Now I will try to argue my points with theoretical backups. As Linda Hatchian says, adaptation is not just a formal entity, but also a process. Neither a product nor the process of adaptation exists in vacuum. I have already explained it earlier with my illustration of, Colchicea. Now, next slide, please. Also, I will, please, yes, I will also use Henry Jenkins, though Henry Jenkins is not a direct theoretician on adaptation. I will use his participatory culture, his topic, his theory on participation culture, participatory culture, convergence culture, and also I will use more what he has talked about, particularly his comment on or his standpoint on adaptation as a strategy of participation. Next slide. Before coming directly to Henry Jenkins, I must talk about audiences and our viewers and our consumers' significant role while analyzing everyday changing scenarios of cultural performance today. Though Jenkins, I have told that Jenkins had not talked about adaptation. Today we select things, everything from fooding to dressing, traveling to investing based on the number of stars a product and or service achieves. Today's media culture has entangled us in such a way that we hardly decide things depending on our own. Living in the consumer culture, we are not only becoming active consumers by clicking the button of like, follow, subscription, subscribe, and by commenting, but also by instigating or activating other viewers to engage in active being or emerging as active consumers, which increase or decrease viewership parameters of an online product and or services. Hatchian has emphasized interactive category of viewers in digital age. Similarly, important is observed the circulation of blogging content across multiple media, from Facebook to YouTube, and from TV shows to short reels, depend heavily on consumers' active participation, in which, as Jenkins has told, an audience is not a passive receiver, rather active participant who interact with digital creators. Thus, in digital culture, the borderline between a content creator or a producer and consumer blurs. Both work simultaneously. For Jenkins, the term participatory culture contrasts with older notions of passive media spectatorship. Rather than talking about media producers and consumers as occupying separate roles, we might now see them as participants who interact with each other. He further notes that convergence represents cultural shift, as consumers are encouraged to seek out new information and make connections among dispersed media content. In order to illustrate this point, I would like to, next slide please, I would like to give an illustration of new non-Bengali, a new non-Bengali daughter-in-law would like to give a stance to her Bengali in-laws by cooking traditional shukto, which usually young generation doesn't know, but she can give a stance to her new in-laws by that searching dispersed blogs which she might have learned from searching various cooking blogs on the same item, but she would consume recipes processed according to her requirements of preparing dish in few minutes. Similar is applicable to a health conscious mom. I just told you about that the black momo, that millet momo, which I had told I would clarify later. Similar is applicable to a health conscious mom who take information of cooking, hassle-free, healthy tiffin for her children like uh, Kodoko momo, because today we are very much scared of taking that the refined wheat momo. So Jenkins further says consumption has become a collective process, a collective intelligence, which can be seen as an alternative source of media power. We are learning how to use the power through our day-to-day interaction with convergence culture. Thus, it is not just that the digital bloggers go through processual adaptation in cultural negotiation, but consumers also adapt in their requirements. The cooking blogs help them in the process of providing information. Next slide. The most important thing is to survive in the competitive digital platform for these cooking bloggers. So what the survival strategy of the cooking bloggers is the most important thing. So see, they stage traditional dishes in the ways that would attract audience and increase their subscribers. As Moore has told, adaptation becomes a strategy of participation. Audiences take ownership of existing media. So while some bloggers make audience nostalgic by their narratives, setup, background music, and presentation, some others attract the attention of audience by focusing on history of a cuisine, which is often associated with famous people of literary and culinary world. As for example, Lost and Rare Recipes, a cooking series of a TV food channel, which mainly focuses on cooking of Tagore's home and or Thakurbari Ranna and Belade's cooking program, etc. In Nepali cooking blogs, Amako Kitchen, Kanchi Kitchen Official, or Nepali home cooking can be mentioned next. So both Nepali and Bengali cooking blogs are presented with village background. This is also a strategy where the main person in focus is an old lady, either motherly or grandmotherly figure. They engage audience emotionally in hyper world of savior by rousing their palate visually and audibly. So often we have also seen that a village atmosphere, well, that the grandma is cooking on clay pot, and that actually raises our nostalgia. So unlike cookbooks, fixed recorded account of recipes with which I started my presentation and its process, the cooking bloggers is recursive and fluid. And it is through their visual performative act, they face the challenges of ever-changing audience, platform algorithm, visual culture, and entrepreneurial demands. Now, I conclude by asking a question to the audience. Are we sure of our identity in this digital culture, whether as a Bengali or Nepali based on our food habits? The food items that we take from breakfast to dinner vary from kodoko roti or millet bread to macher jhol bhat or fish curry rice or gundruk jhol bhat to plain dal bhat and fish curry. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, ma'am. This was very interesting. Discourse on cuisines, and we really feel tempted by looking at Kodo, momos, and all. Can't remember all these, but this is basically the benefit of adaptation. We see that the culture, the tradition which we take pride in, we rejoice, and that's how it is rejoiced. That's how we find that we are grounded somewhere. We have a culture to talk about, and the theories which you have applied of adaptation. You talked about nostalgia, and I think we feel nostalgic, and as well we scroll, on screen, finding certain cuisines over there, and then sometimes we feel that we have to attempt. Uh, So this is, I think, that at least, taking our culture forward, how this is a fluid, you have said that this is fluid,
Cultural identity.
fluid cultural identity. Um, Although you see that, we talk about capitalism or we talk about commodification, but within this capitalism and commodification, we find that, the culture too is surviving. So the culture story is, taken forward by these bloggers. So in a way, this is a very well taken discourse on culinary
Items.
um,
Adaptation.
adaptations. All right. And this processual adaptation, which the term that you have used, I think this is another take for us in lecture. Now, I think we can take up the questions because otherwise my take is, about questions is that, generally we tend to forget as well. So we can take up some questions before we start the next presentation. Your questions, please. Yes. Dr. Daniel is there. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your very interesting paper. And I have some commentaries. First, I don't know, I'm not sure, but your paper was about journey from wonderful point of view, I think. In Europe, we have a special situation when cooking books are prepared for men. And it is question. Do you recognize this situation in, for example, in Asia or in India? It is first.
Your question is that do you mean that situational context that we cook food
Yeah.
for whom you think?
And in Europe,
My opinion
idea,
is
the cooker.
no.
And yes, it is right. And some books published nowadays, yeah, are prepared like a guide for man in kitchen, not for what. And it is question, it is gender or it is male, what it is. From
Okay.
your point of view.
Thank you for your question and for your observation. The thing is that what I mentioned is that adaptation does not exist in vacuum since antiquity. So that's why I have referred to 1947's partition of Bengal. So because of that, the massive migration from East Bengal to Calcutta, out of the poverty, people used to collect some greeneries like pulpisia or arby stems, for which those food item was called poor man's food. And today it has become a kind of nostalgia which is served in famous restaurants of Kolkata. This is one point. I think that you have told that whether, or you have commented on that or you have made it genderized, whether that the cooking area I mentioned of, female or male. I did not have any, or I don't have any intention of talking about male or separating it as that. Yes, but the thing is that, yes, I have mentioned Thakur Bari Ranna, or I have mentioned Rabindranath Tagore's cooking, the home's, recipe, because it is counted, it is taken as something, what you say, that traditional at the same time that aristocracy. Okay, so that's why that I have mentioned that today's cooking blogs entitled their blog as Thakur Bari Ranna, or that the cooking of Tagore's kitchen. That I just mentioned. Anyway, thank you for your question.
May I add something with 25 years ago in India, I came across a book, the title of the book was a cookbook for bachelors and those who hate cooking. It didn't mention that only bachelors might read it. It also talked about those who hate cooking, but probably women as well.
Thank you.
Any other question, please?
Can I one
Yes.
again? It's very interesting for me
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I am cooker. I have to our house.
You are good, yeah.
Adela is my guide. I'm
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm a worker. Okay.
Yes.
But more serious about your topic. I think about other type of books, cookbooks. In Czech Republic, in Poland, in Slovakia, sometimes in Ukraine, some people have cultural
Okay.
complexes.
Mhm.
And when they decided by cookbook, sometimes they look for very special designs, recipes, and question.
Yeah.
Are available in your tradition books created not for real meal, not for real our health body, only for spiritual or for society or position in our society. For example, in Poland, we have one man, cook man, who create many books about cooking and traveling.
Oh,
And it is for, I think, for 5 class book. And it is not exactly for prepare meal, only maybe what is interesting in German to eat, what is interesting in crabs. Yeah. And it is one type, but more serious, we have also, for example, Zen chant. When you bought, you can buy a book, but it isn't for creating real bread or tea. Only it's like receipt to meditation to control yourself. But it is available in your
nowadays, and the changes has come in our society also, that the cooking is not just restricted for the female, and also the male take very, that they have major role even, because today it is not that a man earns money, also that the female member has also to go to the office, and even not only that the cooking, also that the other domestic activities like children, looking after children and everything, all are shared. So it's not uncommon in our society also. Thank you.
That way, these changes are being brought in by the media.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Congratulations, ma'am. I really enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you.
I'm one of those busy working moms
Yeah.
who scroll pretty shows just to find out for quick recipes for my children boxes. Now, I wanted to know your opinion about the so-called traditional exotic dishes, which were earlier, almost all the kitchens by middle class family referred to Kojusha,
Yeah.
Korma. Now, something exotic being sold in
A memory.
yes,
Yeah.
high.
Mhm.
Now, traditional recipe. will make the constitution and then that is
Yes, yeah.
posted on that class.
Yes, yes, sure.
I recently bought something called Rakshi Kitchen. You will understand.
Yes,
what
yes,
I'm
yes.
referring to.
Nokshipite, yeah.
We use an example of how to use it in an easier manner. In fact, I try to use that for my the next time I will. There are our daily lives
Uh-huh.
and we should get organized. So what is it?
I have I did not give that illustration by using Bengali food dish or the dish, Bengali dish. Rather, I have given an example of shell roti. Okay. Now look that once upon a time that it was shell roti in Nepal was cooked during the festival, and it was usually that the village women would gather, and it would take 10 to 12 hours from drain the rice into the water, and then taking that the old grinder to cook it. And while they would cook, because it was in a huge quantity that they would prepare it, that usually the women would gather and they would sing. Okay, so it was a kind of celebratory food. Today, what a busy mom does, busy mom has bought a machine, and that the machine very easily, by mixing that the rice bread, which is easily available in market, and also that refined wheat, that would be mixed, that would be used in the machine, and very easily within 15 to 20 minutes it would be made. So Nakshikatha is also the same thing that I have seen. Just I'd like to tell you that how that by using that just the fork, and that they make the design there, and within a minute that the Nakshi or the design is prepared. I like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We won't be able to pick up more questions now. You can directly talk to ma'am later on. May I now invite our next speaker, Professor Daniel Kalinowski, from the Institute of Philology, Pomeranian University in Lusk.
Is it okay? Correct pronunciation? Quiet.
Or
Good.
Slusk.
Swopsk.
Slusk.
Yeah.
Difficult to pronounce, but again, I could do that. I'm happy.
Yeah, because it is from Slavian language, it's a
I
little
don't
bit
know, because, you know,
exotic.
there must be something that is silent. It's not silent, but again, a mix of certain sounds, I suppose.
Yeah. I thank you
So
for
the title is From Literature to the Pages of Comics, Examples of Edgar Allan Poe and George Orwell.
okay. Thank you for invitation to India. Thank you for your invitation to my paper about pages of literature to the frames of comics, and it will be about Edgar Allan Poe and George Orwell. Unfortunately, only about two writers. My methodology is maybe important before pictures, and from a set of diverse methodological proposals for the following consideration of adaptation of classic works of literature in the space of comics. I have chosen the approach characteristic of the intertextual discourse expressed by Gerard Genet. It was more like 40 years ago. And the comics discourse pursued by, among others, Jan Buttons and Hugo Frey and Hilary Chute. because I'm from Poland, as a Polish researcher, I also refer to Polish academic achievements and draw inspiration from approaches of Jerzy Szyłak and Wojciech Birek, the most important Polish comic book researchers. And now my point of view and my terminus a quo from Latin, pictocentrism. I intend to discuss only the most important factors of comic book adaptation and characterize the process of transferring narrative, character creation, time, space, and figures of the world of the values from the field of literature to the separate field of art. I'm not doing this to promote the superiority of literary text over comic book text, but rather to highlight cultural facts noticeable in Western traditions since mid-20th century, which are associated with a shift away from the formerly dominant logocentrism in favor of pictocentrism. Maybe we know a classical text for comic studies by Mitchell, 1994. And first type of comics, when I will mention pleasure-oriented comics. It is one of many kinds of comics, yeah. Pleasure-oriented approach among creators and consumers is also evident in adaptation of literature into the language of words and images. Comic books based on Greek myths or Western European literary classics, for example, are works that prepare readers for a thorough and profound reading of the original works. In the simplified narrative and pictorial schematic reality proposed by comic book authors, the main focus is on the playful and pleasurable aspect. And we see a very popular comic in France, in Great Britain, and in Poland also. We see now Polish version done on Sheriff, but in original it was published in French, La Maison Chère, by Jean Defeu, like writer, and Jamais Calderon, like artwork. It was published 2023 by title The Fall of the House of Usher. And we see a technique, it is very realistic. But inside, we have many surprises because Jean Defeu, a well-known Belgian scriptwriter and journalist and author of several comic book series set in Europe's past, choose a strategy of unplayful. It is a special type of adaptation, we know, but from when we talk about this example, he departed from the original text that appeared in the Poe's story, and not whole story, only partly. The plot of La Maison Chère features narrative innovations in terms of the characters and plot development, which highlights the factors of betrayal compared to Paul's original story. Here, secondary characters from the urban underworld appear as various types of card players and city criminals with whom the main character has various connections. It does not exist in the original, but in comics it is necessary. And next, when we are looking at the characters and plot of the La Maison Chère as a whole, the modern reader is presented with a story not so much about the collapse of the Usher family, but about a young card player who, fleeing from criminals, ends up at the home of his relative Robert Usher and learns of the death of his sister Madeleine. And in original, Usher house collapsed by the underwater, underground. Now, in French version, we see burning house, and it is about a little bit words about plot, but very interesting is talk about Jamais Calderon, like art worker, because his storyline is concrete and in convention of realism. The characters in the comic are drawn with sense of realism, photographically accurate bodies, faces, facial expressions, and gestures. And characters are shown against a backdrop of nature or urban buildings. We see. And new new element that exists in Paul. We think also pastor or person of Edgar Allan Poe, exactly like we see Poe from a photo from 19th century. We see also Edgar Allan Poe on the pages of comics, and we see also living corpses. It is, I think, very strong pressing from TV, from movies. But it is very logically for Differ and Calderon. And their interpretation and adaptation of literature means that the reader will not experience the atmosphere of melancholy vital to Poe works, nor will they feel the mood of decadence. Okay, and I will skip and the second example, George Orwell and 1984. It is an example of a graphic novel that shows restraint and fidelity to the literary model. I think it is like opposition for first example. Was published in 2020 in original in English, and we see dystopian novel, original 214 pages, but when we turn to version in comics, we see also 200 pages. It is a very big book. It is reason why we think it is a rightful adaptation. And we see the most important ideological factors of George Orwell novels, anonymity of man in the civilization of the past, the negative aspect of the existence of the state that attempt to rebel against the apparatus of oppression, and the final defeat of the main character. I think it is a very serious effect and very acceptable for owner rights to publish also else. Author of the illustration Fidonesty also remains faithful to Orwell's literary creation. And we see very realistic Julia and main character, futuristic London, industrial landscape. And as a visual artist, he chose monochromatic colors, the dark color of the world depicted in the graphic novel are consistent with the pessimistic content of the literary work. And we see also like Nesty is very professional when he depicted realism on the face. For example, the great character, and his technique isn't with pastiche, without demonic forms or deformation. And textual and graphic adaptation of content from Orwell's work in Brownell and Nesty graphic novel is an example of the equal power of meaning in the original work and artistic expression of the adaptation of a literary classic, not like in first example. Okay, and last part my presentation, expansion of comics in the art market. Literature, like any human creation, is also a product of consumption. As Walter Benjamin wrote in the 1930s, in order for this type of product to be acceptable to a wide audience, it should be easily available, property promoted, and accompanied by a set of reviews and analyses. Comic books are a perfect example of this. Examining the evolution in the perception of comics and graphic novels, it becomes even the trend initiated by Andy Warhol, the founder of pop art, we know, who created comic-style portraits of prominent figures in Western cultural history, like Sigmund Freud, Karl Marx, or Franz Kafka. And these figures portrayed in a very graphic style transitioned from high culture to popular and mass culture. And today, we have religious, philosophical, and scientific works underwent textual and graphical adaptations presented in comic book series, albums, or graphic novels. In these adaptations, creators selected the most visually engaging elements of the originals, often condensing key scenes and storylines. They also faced decisions regarding narrative voice and style. And in conclusion, the aesthetic qualities of comics and graphic novels establish them as forms of artistic expression that involve a profound and multidimensional process of adaptation of literary works. Moreover, the commercialization of art allows adapters who reinterpret classical literature to gain recognition and popularity, thus contributing to the financial success and publishers. From a broader perspective on the adaptation of classic works into comics and graphic novel, it is evident that the pixel-centric nature of contemporary culture fosters the growth of these expressive genres and promotes their independence from literature. Consequently, it becomes increasingly and independent and stay all their way to interpretation to study our modern culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Daniel, for a very nice presentation and transporting us from the text, from the pages of the books to the comics, to the pictures of the comics. I think adaptation, the very idea of adaptation is that, it transports us to a different world, something our needs. So that way we see that, there are certain changes that occur. And of course, it is, purposeful that way. Here I would like to say that, it's basically a postmodern state wherein we see that how stories they continue, how one story gives rise to so many other stories. So it's not only, the story that matters, but the presentation of it. So we see that graphic and say representation happens to be one. We find stories, but then many stories come out of it. So it was a very nice presentation on the two novelists, George Orwell and Edgar Allan Poe. I now request the audience to please give your observations or queries for Professor Daniel. Yes, Ashish.
So, do you think that the comic adaptations, especially here in the context of Edgar Allan Poe and George Orwell, somewhere or somehow they compromise the sanctity of the original text while undergoing a journey of transcendence for adaptation? If yes, how? And if no, how? I think that's the time.
Okay, thank you for your question. I'm not sure what is the best answer, my answer. If I am a researcher in literature, I think adaptation from point of view French makers, French and Spanish makers are wrong. It is a big mistake. But from other hand, if I am a comic study researcher, it is not problem. It is other point of view, it is other product, it is proposition, and my pretension, my bad opinion about not according way doesn't matter. Yeah. And it is a little bit strange for me during conference organized by Melow, because Melow is a society for researchers, literature researchers, yeah. And maybe this proposition, this presentation is against literary studies. I have once observation from my Polish society, Polish Researcher Society. We have first PhD about comics. First was 2020. It was 25 years ago. Maybe it is short tradition comic study, yeah, not literary, comic study. And from my point of view, I expect will be more and more works over comics, over graphic novel, without connections with literature. It is my opinion.
Yes, please.
I missed some of your paper, which I'm sorry, but I listened to the last part and I was looking at your abstract. Just wanted a quick clarification. I'm curious about your choice of using the word comics, actually, because I have some little bit of knowledge about this field, and I think graphic novel is often a word that's preferred because the word comics might be kind of repeat this sort of subordination of the genre, and because comics entertainment and those not making these are serious literary works of very serious
Yeah.
aspect.
Yeah.
Why comics instead of graphic novels at the top?
Okay. First, it is problem not without resolution. We have American tradition of study over comics, French, Polish also. I'm pro for this meaning. Comic book, it is a short stories with maybe 30, only 30 pages, yeah, with very good known hero. Comic books can generation new series, very long series, for example, with 100, 200 small books. But graphic novel is late product, our century, I think. Some people, some researchers thinking about graphic novel is since 80s, last century, and it is a very ambitious proposition with 200 pages, with very metaphoristic language, not with stress from literary author. Yeah, when art worker have many possibilities, create other creation like in sources, and I think graphic novel is very interesting, is very fruitful, and it is for me it is the most exciting source to study.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Just be brief, please.
And some similar questions. What they very big for to the schools. Which makes sense.
Okay. Okay, you mentioned something. Yes. I'm not sure. What is question?
To mention big texts.
Okay. Myths, Greek myths. Okay. Okay. When we talk about comic books or graphic novel, on the base ancient Greek tradition, I think about myths like story about Zeus, about Hera, and gods of Olymp. It is for me Greek myths, yeah. And we have in Europe between us in every language in Europe we have comics about ancient Greek gods. And when we see plot from comic books, it is very simple, without many shadows, many details, only plot. Yeah. It is not profitable, not get known for the future, because young people received, for example, from a library, only simple story without sacral meaning. Yeah. And the same is situation with Holy Bible. We have many denominations in Christianity, but in Lutheran or Catholic tradition, we have many stories about saints, about Jesus Christ, about Holy Family. But when we see Jesus Christ like a rock star, or when we see very muscles Jesus who wake up from growth, it's a little bit strange. Yeah, yeah. And it is reason why some comic books are dangerous for deep meaning of philosophy or religions. But I think comics aren't good good methods, good tools to clarify what is God, what is science, and all that. Yeah.
All right, so let's give a big round of applause for this.
Thank you very much, Professor Daniel.
Our next presenter is Yuhe Shen, a PhD scholar from the Department of English, Hong Kong Baptist University, China. And the title of her paper is Hybridity, Carnivalism, and Commercialization, Transcultural Adaptation of Traditional Myths in Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to express my gratefulness for everyone because I feel so warm welcome here, and it's my first time to come to India, and my research topic about midnight children. Well, it's just based on my shallow knowledge about India. So I find this opportunity very valuable that I want to learn from you. And I hope that I can get some valuable suggestions. Okay, so in my thesis, hybridity, carnivalism, and commercialization, transcultural adaptation of traditional myths in Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children, I try to argue that this landmark novel performs a complex transcultural adaptation of Indian mythology, revealing a process characterized by three critical forces that ultimately expose the symbolic violence inherent in neo-colonial structures. Let's start with that intriguing moment in the novel. The earnest young priest declaring that Christ Jesus was a crystal shade of pale sky blue. This blue god is more than a theological quirk. It's a potent metaphor, I see, for the core dilemma Rushdie explores, the unstable adaptation of traditional symbols across cultural and historical gaps. How can ancient myths retain meaning, let alone power, when transplanted into the fractured reality of post-colonial India? Midnight Children provides a complex, often tragic answer. Firstly, hybridity, the importance of transplanted gods. In my analysis, the central characters Salim Sinai and Shiva are deliberate modern reincarnations of their Hindu mythological prototypes, Vishnu and the Preserver, and Shiva the Destroyer. Salim, embodying Vishnu's mantle, possesses powers like telepathy, driven by an idealistic desire to preserve the unity of the newborn Indian nation. His rival, Shiva, named directly after the deity, wields destructive physical power through his knees, echoing the god's unstable duality. However, Rushdie radically disempowers these hybrid deities. Their mystical lineage does not grant them mastery over history. Salim's body, like the subcontinent itself, becomes a map of fractures. when he attempted to establish a loose federation of equals through the Midnight Children's Conference, his words were mixed with the paradoxical rhetoric of Gandhian nonviolent resistance and British parliamentary democracy, which points to the cognitive dissonance experienced by post-colonial intellectuals in their misappropriation of traditional resources. During Indira Gandhi's emergency, both Salim and Shiva are brutally castrated. This is not mere bodily violence. It is a Foucauldian spectacle meticulously designed to destroy the sacred core these figures represent. The sterilization program surgically removes their superhuman abilities, symbolizing the state's systematic eradication of potential for diversity. The Midnight Children themselves, who embody the last throw of everything antiquated and retrogressive in our myth-ridden nation. The hybrid forms of Vishnu and Shiva are rendered fundamentally impotent within the new national narrative. Their castration signifies a self-colonizing reduction of potent native myths to mere performance. Secondly, carnivalism, draining the sacred through spectacle. How does Rushdie achieve this dismantling? Through carnivalism, a narrative strategy that relentlessly parodies and satirizes. As I draw upon Roland Barthes' concept of myth as a spectacle of excess, like his analysis of wrestling, I see Rushdie employing a similar strategy. Look at the description of the Midnight Children. Bearded girls, a boy with the fully operative gills, and Siamese twins with two bodies dangling off a single head and a neck. This extravagant listing isn't reverent. It parodies the gravity of epic myth by bombarding us with over-the-top wonders, exhausting the content by the form. As Butter says, the secret core is vacuumed out. This carnivalesque impulse thrives in the novel's depiction of the slums, Bakhtin's public square brought to life. Ventriloquists make stones seem alive. Contortionists swallow their own legs. Fire eaters defy bodily norms. It represents a vibrant subversion of colonial modern rationality. The grotesque body laughing in the face of imposed order. The slum's spectacle morphs into an exotic stage, gratifying a voyeuristic gaze. The poorness of the slum gets spectacleized into a theatrical stage, gratifying the voyeuristic desires of the middle class, while genuine structural oppression vanishes within the carnivalizer narratives. Thirdly, commercialization. When God becomes good, as India enters the consumer age, Rushdie writes satires about the relentless commodification of the secret. Myths are stripped of their spiritual essence, repackaged and placed on the market for mass consumption. Consider the Arjuna India bike. Here, the name of the hero, Archer, from the Mahabharata, synonymous with secret duty and martial honor, is reduced to a brand name on a mass-produced bicycle. The transcendent is replaced by the utilitarian. The epic hero becomes a logo. Besides, Ravana, the archetypal demon king from the Ramayana, finds his name repurposed as the label for a Hindu nationalist extortion racket that terrorizes Muslim businesses. Rushdie satirizes. Behind this facade of racial hatred, the Ravana Gang was a brilliantly conceived commercial enterprise. Religious symbolism is thus transformed into pure commercial weaponry. The most stark case is that of Lord Khusro, an ordinary boy. Cyrus Dubash is cynically manufactured by his ambitious mother into a customer deity through mass advertising and staged miracles. He accumulates immense wealth and a vast following. As the narrator sharply notes, this is a calculated reinvention of the most potent of all modern myths, the legend of the coming of Superman, all for religious profit. His eventual drawing while attempting to walk on water serves as a metaphor of the hollow core at the heart of this commercial divinity. This logic of commodification extends to narrative itself. Hanif's failure to be the only realistic writer working in the Bombay film industry also signaled that the traditional mythological narrative had fallen from its throne and become a circular commodity. Gods on the silver screen captivate audiences much as deities once did, but their sanctity is now dictated by box office returns. Jamila Singer embodies the endpoint of this process, a veiled, nationally obsessed idol, meticulously packaged into a fetish object. She becomes a blank screen for mass desire, her authentic identity erased, leaving only a consumable symbol. In Midnight's Children, Indian society emerges as a mythological theater staged through commodities. Hindu deities shed their religious context to become cultural merchandise in the consumer world, while goods themselves are decorated with divine halos, transforming into fetish objects of modern society. Well, in the end, resistance, replication, and the persistent cycle. Rushdie seeks to use Indian myths against Europeanism and the colonial violence. However, his strategies often unintentionally replicate colonial knowledge frameworks. Shiva's violence risks being a subaltern cliche, conforming Western stereotypes. Parvati's magical basket of invisibility reduces complex territorial disputes to supernatural adventures, obscuring structural violence in geopolitics. His English narrative, while powerful, cannot escape the inherent violence of the imperial language itself. Furthermore, his literary skills such as stream of consciousness, maze narratives, magical realism, and are fundamentally rooted in Western modernism. His pursuit of a purely Indian aesthetic becomes entangled in this lineage. The post-colonial intellectual is often condemned to deconstruct the empire using the empire's own language and forms. This paradox obscures issues central to Midnight's Children, the logic of transnational capitalism and the subject position of the post-colonial intellectual itself, while amplifying concerns filtered through nationalist or third world lenses. Ultimately, Midnight's Children itself becomes part of the global cultural market. Its critics, Salim's fragmented body mirrors the fate of indigenous forms under global pressure. His Chutney factory becomes a specimen for cultural studies. The adapted myths become exoticized commodities. This process exposes the creative potential of cultural adaptation, but also reveals the perpetual cycle of symbolic violence in neocolonialism. The novel makes us confront the harsh reality. Resistance, even when potent, can be harnessed and repackaged by the very structure it opposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, UH Shen, for his presentation on Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children. All of us are aware about this novel and how he uses magic realism in order to create certain characters. One simple question from you is that, why have you used one-eyed Rushdie in your final summation?
Well, I because I find it interesting that probably this is the consequence of the controversy.
There must be something that is about the problematics in his writing styles.
Yeah.
It may be because of this.
Yes, probably.
So, can you talk a little about it?
Oh, actually, I think it's a very funny coincidence, or you can say that is a kind of a metaphor. That because in Midnight Children, the protagonist Salim Sinai, his body was also fractured and broken into pieces in the end. Well, he feels somehow like Salman Rushdie himself, that he also loses part of his body due to some not different cultures, different religions, politics, controversy, and reflections. So I think it's kind of like he predicts his own destiny in the novel.
Okay. Questions, please. Observations? Yes, please. But just be brief, very brief.
Firstly, congratulations for having the courage to take on an alien culture, I presume, right? And read our text. That's great. I would like you to question or at least rethink this binary that we've drawn between the sacred and the commercial in the Hindu context. Because you see, our gods have always commercial context. All right. Even at something like Durga Puja and Bengal, right? I don't think Hindus necessarily make a distinction of this sort, sacred and commercial, firstly. Even the Hindu rituals, actually, if you look at religious studies scholars, they've often talked about the ritual itself in a sort of a transactional means. Okay? So you could read Mirror Chaudhary on this. He has a book called Hinduism. Where he explains that the very ritual, the fire, you're giving something, water into the fire, that itself is almost like a commercial transaction. You give something to the god, you get something back. So maybe you can problematize that binary. And last suggestion, which is you might want to read into Roland Barthes' mythologies, because it's not really about myths in the ordinary sense at all. It's about culture. It's a book called Semiotics and the way in which that and this spectacle of excess point you're making, that's applicable only to the world of wrestling essay. The rest of the essays in the book are not about spectacle of excess. Let's see. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. For the first question, I think it's a very good suggestion, and I will consider it in my thesis later. And very interestingly, I went to Delhi several days ago, and I went into a Hinduism temple, and there's one guy there. He kept on asking me to donate money to each god. So probably I don't know if it's a kind of tradition here. That probably the religions itself has also some foundation of commercialization already. Well, this is a very interesting aspect. And secondly, about Roland Barthes' mythologies, I know that it's different definition of mythologies, but I think Rushdie reads Roland Barthes and he uses his this definition also not only in Midnight Children, because he sometimes used the myth as a kind of wrongly perceived concept that everybody thinks that is natural, but actually is artificial. But also in his the other novel, Shame, he also even mentioned about Salman Rushdie's mentioned about Roland Barthes' names. So and yeah, and in his imaginary homeland, he also mentioned Roland Barthes. So I think he just used this theory with very clear conscious. So that's why I want to apply Roland Barthes' theories in the thesis. And I think Rushdie's narrative and this carnivalism, this kind of type of writing also corresponds with the first chapter of Roland Barthes' mythology, that is the world of wrestling. It okay, which the core because in the book it says that the core of wrestling is the performance itself, but in my words to entertain everybody, but not about the sports itself. So it's just a show. So kind of like his writing style. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Hello. Yes. I request all of you, if you have any queries, please, you can meet you here later on. Now we have our last presenter because we are running short of time now. So we have Professor Adela Kalinowska, a professor from the Institute of Philology, Pomeranian University in Spruce. And the title of her presentation is Haiku After Adaptation, on the fate of an Oriental genre in the Western world. So the adaptation of haikus in Western world. Very interesting.
I would say thank you very, very much for your invitation. I'm very proud. It is my 5th time on the conference Melow in India. Thank you by heart very much. Haiku after adaptation on the fate of an Oriental genre in the Western world. This is an attempt to highlight several uses related to the Asian, American, and European haiku movements. It will refer to the tradition of the emergence of this genre, through with its depth of understanding the world will be revealed that is the experience of the existence of all things, which in direct consequence can lead directly to enlightenment, satori, a transcendent experience through deep openness and sense of one's own unity with the whole cosmos. The experience does not refer to a single person conception of the absolute in the form of, for example, God, nor does it refer to a spiritual religious experience, which does not mean that this poetry does not refer to transcendental metaphysical experience. It does refer to them, but in a different way, as it stems from a different cultural and spiritual tradition, art, philosophy, and Zen meditation. The historical context will clarify the image of contemporary haiku poetry in the world and at the same time reveal its cognitive quality and the discordance between them. Perhaps it will reveal the gap between old and contemporary haiku. Therefore, I will focus on both the Oriental tradition and the development of this poetry in American and European culture, as well as its short literary form
in Poland. I will also try to capture the mechanism of adaptation of this genre among contemporary audiences and answer the question of how much of it is an authentic experience and how much is a fascination or a fashion for haiku. Haiku stems from Far Eastern tradition and culture. It is connected with both its religious and artistic life. It is linked to the Zen Buddhist way of seeing the world and life. A similar type of experience can be found in tree-line poems, as Alan Watts writes in Zen in Art. A true haiku sees objects in their uncleanness without commentary. In Japanese, called this view of the world sono mama, just as it is, or simply so. In traditional Japanese painting and literary trivia, the common space of both arts is filled with the same aspect of nature. They are full of flowers, birds, butterflies, cherry blossoms and magnolias, chrysanthemums and old pines, the autumn moon and the succession of seasons, among which spring and autumn dominate, symbolically speaking of the cycle of birth and that of transience. This autumn, old are even the birds and clothes. The literary genre now as haiku made its mark on Polish literature even before World War II, thanks to Leopold Staff, who translated the French collection Chinese Fluid in 1992. Later, haiku reappeared in the mind 97 on the wealth of interest in the Orient. Since the 1990s, there has been a real explosion of this poetry. Collections, quasi-anthologies, and pocket editions of this poetic genre are being published. Literary authorities also express their sympathy of this artist's form. Leszek Engelking published haiku own and other people's. Czesław Miłosz presents translation of haiku from English in an originally decorated collection. Literary magazines compete with each other in creating haiku. There are also original ideas for adapting the genre, with changes being made to the form, change the works from the classical Oriental tradition. Recent years have brought literary phenomena which, on the one hand, bear the hallmarks of the internalization of haiku in the creative practices of Polish artists, and on the other hand, testimony to the popularity of this type of work in the Polish literature. There are also voices, Dariusz Fox, that across haiku of intellectual shallowness, easy mediocrity, and execution or vitality. So the time has come for revolution and assessment. The phenomenon of haiku goes beyond mere poetics, becoming a psycho-sociological fact. Since the 1990s, there has been a real explosion of this poetry. Collections, quasi-anthologies, and pocket editions of this poetic genre are being published. Literary authors also express their sympathy for this artistic form. Leszek Engelking published his own and other people's haiku, and Czesław Miłosz present translation of haiku from English in an originally doctorate collection. Haiku, to varying degrees consistent with the original genre, was initially created by great poets, par excellence Stanisław Grochowiak, drew on haiku in his formal explorations in haiku images. This reference was extremely fruitful artistically and testifies to this poet's great self-awareness. Haiku was also an inspiring tradition for other artists, as can be seen in the poetry of Jerzy Harasimowicz and Ryszard Krywicki. Haiku poetry did not appear very often in magazines in the 1980s. Poetry, creativity, and literature did not publish much material on this genre. Younger magazines created a small community oriented, seeking readers and promoting more news from abroad, created haiku much more often. Since the 1990s, a special role can be attributed to Time of Culture, a magazine in which a considerable amount of literature related to Oriental traditions, including Japanese ones, can be found. The then literature in the world and notebook is also did not shy away from translating haiku. Haiku, in its new American form, was presented in the 1993 anthology, The Ways of Karma and the Path of Dharma. The publication of Buddhism religious associations such as the Way of Zen and the Vajra Dragon, which were initially close to a wider audience, also played a special role in popularizing traditional haiku and increasing its reach. In these magazines monthly, haiku was a constant element of the world view. The poetry of the tree line for rich Europe and America in the second half of the 9th century. Interest in the East was posed among other things by a reaction to the crisis of values in industrial societies. This poetry is an expression of resistance against information overland and technologization. After World War II, interest in Japan, especially its culture and art, gave even more intensely. The situation was caused by political factors. Many Americans stayed there during the occupation, and after their return, they included their content with the art of the exotic East. The American generation of poets belonging to the Beat generation, including Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, Gary Snyder, and Diana Di Prima, were most inspired by haiku poetry. Mitsu Suzuki, a Japanese master of haiku poetry and author of A White Tea Bowl, also lived in exile in America. The American haiku movement, the Haiku Society of America, also flourished to the form of publication and the magazine Propcoms. The West also adopted three-line poetry, but are the same haiku that Far Eastern literature created. Sociological and cultural conditions have determined a certain difference in Western haiku. Here is an example of a one-line haiku by George Sweet. Night begins to gather between her breasts, or one of Ernst Junger's mantras, laurels gathered in greenhouses. The length of the verse and typeface 17 syllable pattern underwent a fundamental reform. The themes of the poems also changed, dictated by a monthly different from that of the East and other realities of life. The first wave of America haiku featured the tribes of nature, but later on things of technical, cultural, and sociological change began to push their way in more and more often. A rainy winter evening, an inflated doll slumped over in a pawn shop. In many cases, nature is replaced by consumption. In the doll's head, clippings from newspapers. A completely new accent and now in classical haiku, is the eroticism introduced into the work, sometimes in an extremely subtle way. Late August, I bring him a garden in my sphere, sometimes spoken directly without a while and somewhat provocingly. Orgasm is coming in the apartment next door. Someone is flushing the toilet. A separate category of works modeled on haiku are texts dominated by elements of mockery and grotesque. This feature is typical of both American haiku and the Russian variant of this genre. Take Vladimir Shinkaryev's Stone Garden or Hopu, Tanki, and Armored Transporters, for example. Fyodor gradually put his mouth to the bottle, and suddenly it was empty. Maxim didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Haiku, or Golden Throats of a Dog by the aforementioned Dariusz Brzuska-Brzuskiewicz, also leaned towards the grotesque and playful. Finished Frania, finished Risho, and they went to the same class. Or the piece with the charming title about eating swans. Somewhere out there they fly, two swans, wearing their nets. They are already feeling sick from being constantly fed breath. Haiku, as a genre of literary expression that immigrated in Japanese culture, was noticed by Western intellectuals in the 9th century. They tried to translate this words into English, French, and German, also Polish, also Kashubian, with varying results, most often leaving the three-line structure of the work. However, they were unable to cope with the religious and cultural background of haiku as well as with formal issues, the number of syllables in a line. Also, in the 9th century, Western writers adapted Japanese haiku or tried to write their own forms, referring not so much to the original context of Japanese Buddhism or Taoism, but to European religious traditions, Christian mystical poetry, or native schools of aesthetics, Impressionism, and Surrealism. It was not until the 9th century that the Beat generation was able to find its own expression for haiku in Western culture, already aware of what Buddhism was and finding equivalents in American or European culture for creating a mood of concentration, momentariness, or spiritual discovery. Their adaptation or the haiku genre brought with it a great deal of popularity for this literary form and permanently introduced into Western literature. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Adela, for this wonderful presentation on haikus in the Western world. How haikus, they have been adapted in the Western world, how the genre gets a complete change, whether that be in terms of its form, the fixities, how they stand dismantled, and the flexibility that they apply to it. For example, you see there are certain patterns, religious patterns, certain cultural markers are there, but then it has been completely adapted into the Western world, and it's a wonderful presentation. We get literally transported, and of course, you can say it will, encourage our students to work in that field as well. Now I invite one or two observations and queries, please. from our students as well, master students. Yes, ma'am, sir, please. Ma'am.
Service. Once the call, I, the lead property, and it is, yes, it's about, yes, this picture of a goatee kind of voices on the outside. So am I correct or am I reading too much of it? But I'm not
So this, yes, drugi termin z tego. I co znaczy to? Jest powiedzieć.
I.
Karma.
Yeah. Way of karma.
Yes.
Dharma is there.
Karma and the path of Dharma. Yes, and the path of Dharma. This is anthology, poetry of American Buddhism.
Buddhism of America.
Okay.
Buddhism of America. Allen Ginsberg, Alan Watts, Gary Snyder, Jack Kerouac, Chogyam Trungpa. He's very great master of Vajrayana, Tantric master, Tibetan master. He emigrated to America. And also he married with one woman from England. Very popular master, but now he died, yes. Allen Ginsberg also met, I think, Beat Generation poets. Gary Snyder met with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And but times in Beat Generation, yes, Beat Generation poets, interesting about Buddhism, but it is not reality way, because Beat Generation poet also experience with drugs, acid point and Satori.
Marijuana and other.
Yes.
We know.
It is not the same experience, deeply experience religion and
Highway.
highway, yes, highway. Sky of marijuana.
For example.
For example, yes. But okay, he's very, especially Allen Ginsberg, very famous poet. And for me, it is also big news, because 2 years ago, I worked in library in California, in San Francisco, and I found many volumes of haiku, many volumes. It is very interesting. But in California, in San Francisco, from Japan coming many masters of Zen. Par excellence, Shunryu Suzuki. I also talk about Mitsu Suzuki, wife. She was wife of Shunryu Suzuki. She lived in America and also write many books of haiku, but this haiku is very traditional. She was master of Ti-Wei.
Chado.
Yeah? Yes, Chado, Ti-Wei. But Allen Ginsberg also met with Shunryu Suzuki, master of Zen, and Gary Snyder also, Jack Kerouac, Dina. And it is reason this individual connect with reality Japanese master, and Big Generation also write many haiku. Thank you. Maybe too long.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes.
This negotiation on the high school for Western Australia might feature a bit earlier. Ezra Pound, for one, has the very famous haiku at metro station. So I don't know if it's a big generation that really gets interested in the haiku or a bit earlier the trajectory.
Is that comfortable with sort of place? Like, generation for the
Big generation for a point. This is European tradition.
Yes, Sneha.
I just don't know what they like with yes, I mean, so I'm watching.
Of my teacher. Because let's say the college, we always give her equal. So these versions, and there was the plan set.
As you find high food, be able to find comfort.
Personalization is a fun color, right? Yeah. So if social, it's yours to this story. It's the clue. If it's what was the you know?
Yes,
It's just nice day.
Tanka, it is long form.
Yeah, it's a five.
Haiku is short form.
Shorter.
Haiku in Japanese tradition, we have renga. Renga, this is long poems. And haiku, haikai, it is only
One time.
from renga 3 lines. And in Japanese, first we have calligraphy, haikai, yes? And haiku, incarnation from haiga. Yes? From
Shorter form.
from calligraphy. It's okay?
Thank you very much. So we have completed all the 4 presentations, and I hope all of you must have enjoyed these presentations. They transported us from one to the other. We just had to hop one genre to the other, from novel, from culinary blogs to comics, and then to haikus. And we find that how adaptations they are important in our world nowadays, in contemporary world. So thank you very much, Professor Sushmita Talukdar ma'am and Professor Daniel, Miss Yukesh Chen, and Mr. Adela.
And for you, for chair.
Thank you, sir, so very much. A big round of applause for all our presenters. These were wonderful. And I must the courage to say or stop you somewhere because they were so very interesting. Thank you so very much for enlightening us.
Congratulations.
We just want to click one photograph. Please come this side. हाँ वहाँ पर अच्छा
यहीं कर लेंगे अजय भाई इसमें बताना क्लोज आगे हो सकता है